Hi, everybody. This is Shannon Olson. Thank you all for being here. I am Director of Training and Development with the Henley Leadership Group. I've been coaching and training for about 20 years now, and I am going to be the person that is engaging with you in the chat windows, the question windows, answering any questions that might come up during the webinar. I have quite a few people online with me today, so be patient if you do ask a direct question. And then if a really great question surface, I'll make sure to pass them on to Dede, who is actually going to be facilitating the webinar today. Dede, do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dede Henley. Thank you for joining us today. I've been in the leadership development space for a little over 30 years and am the founder of the Henley Leadership Group. So you may know about our company. Really what we do is just work with leaders globally. So grateful that I have the opportunity to share with you a little bit of our work and what we're kind of excited about with the happiness factor. So great.
Excellent. So I would like to take this time just to set up how to best participate. So I know sustaining attention for 45 minutes can be a challenge. So there's a few ways that we've made it easier for you. We're going to have polls. I'd like you to go ahead and use your Q&A window, your chat window. So if you can take a minute now and just give me a hello in your question window, I'll know that you know exactly where that is. Oh, good. And the hellos are coming in. Thank you very much. And then also there's a raise hand feature right next to your name. It's a little hand. There may be times that Dede asks you questions to raise your hand, and that's a great way to stay engaged and participate. And then do your best just to minimize distractions. You know, if you can, turn cell phones off, close down your email windows, and do your best just to stay with us. And hello, everybody. Thanks for all the hellos. Sweet. And as many of you may know, hosting a webinar can be kind of an isolating experience. We're just talking out to you, and we hope it's resonating. So as much as you can engage with us, we appreciate it. It makes for a better experience for everybody. Great, thanks.
All right, so one of the things that we value a lot in our work is really hearing from you. So, and in a webinar environment, as Shannon said, it's a little bit awkward. You know, we're talking out and we can't hear you back, but we're gonna run a couple of polls. So I'm gonna just jump right in and we're gonna run our first poll. And I just wanna find out, what's your current view on happiness at work? How do you think about this so that I kind of have a sense of where to start this conversation?
Oops, give me 1 minute here. Oh, for some reason.
There it goes. Oh, that's
nope.
not yet.
I was sorry about that. Okay, we're having our first little breakdown. Sorry about that. For some reason, the poll isn't working. So what I would like you to do is answer the question, what's your current view of work, of happiness at work? So go ahead and chat in your window. What we're looking for is, really, is this a topic that you find yourself focusing on? Do you think it matters? Is it something that you maybe have an inkling that it could make a difference, but you're not sure how? Or are you sort of in the camp of, I'm just here to do my job and happiness doesn't really matter all that much? So I would just love to hear a few bits of feedback. For some reason, the poll feature isn't available for this particular poll, but the others will happen. So just a few insights for yourselves. Does happiness matter to you at work? Do you want to focus on it? Or are you here to kind of find out why it matters and if it's something that you should focus more on? Great. So workload, happiness pops up as a topic, but it's not a focus for us. Happiness is what makes me come to work, is that what someone shared, which is great. We're a happy group, others are sharing. Others are saying it's about resilience, about really how to keep your work sustainable and fulfilling, and that happiness is an aspect of that. And then this person says happiness is very important, that if you don't have it, you're just not productive, which is a bit of our bias as well, and that it matters. So it makes sense that all of that who attended today would think it's important. So great, thank you for rolling with me on that.
Great. All right, so you know, the big idea, why happiness, why now? And I'll share with you, you know, this is a little bit of a personal quest of mine. You know, in the 80s, a great book came out by Tom Peters that was called In Search of Excellence. And that book, I remember I was in a job that I really did not love at all and certainly wasn't happy. And when I read that book, In Search of Excellence, I started to see that maybe something more was possible, that there were organizations that were focused on doing better than the one that I was working for. So I look back and I think that kind of started my quest as an OD professional or organization development professional. I started really focusing my career on how do we make workplaces better for the people inside of them, and certainly then knowing that they could impact the people that they serve, customers, stakeholders, like that. So in part, that's why I personally want to focus on happiness. And for me, it feels like the upgrade to the In Search of Excellence idea. But today, I'm really going to talk about three things. First of all, why do we even need to focus on happiness? Really, the data and the statistics that tell us that we need to pay attention to this. Second, I want to introduce to you our reset, reconnect, and reimagine model, our three-step model that kind of helps you know where to place your attention. And then third, how you can engage more in the creation of a happy workplace. So those are the three things I'm going to do in the next 40 minutes or so. So let's start with happiness. And we're really not talking about, being happy on a Friday or after a 2-week vacation. We're really talking about the kind of happiness that says, I know I'm in the right place. I know this is a good job or role for me. So that kind of true happiness or true contentment that has people kind of saying, I want what he or she has. So happiness has multi-facets, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but let's consider a couple questions. And these are questions that I've gotten over the last year or so as we've been thinking about happiness at work. Does it matter? Some folks would say that happiness at work maybe isn't relevant. Well, we think it is. We think that it matters a whole lot. And we're kind of focusing our efforts on happiness creation from the top down, from the CEO down. And what we found is that leaders aren't really looking at this enough. And in our world, this is an upgrade. We've had an idea that people come to work, they get paid, they do their job, they go home. That's enough. A paycheck is enough. But we know that in the current environment, talent is, we're in a war for talent. I think that's what it's being called. We know that talent is leaving if they're not happy. We know that the millennials are more dedicated to happiness at work than previous generations may have been. So we know that it's relevant. We have a sense that it's relevant, and we do believe that it matters. So what I want to do is point to why we think you need to pay attention to it. And those are really the statistics on unhappiness at work. So I'm going to go over here and click. So here's what we know, the cost of unhappiness at work. I'm going to say a little bit more about workplace stress. We know that disengagement is at an all-time high. Most of us have seen those dismal statistics. We know that turnover is also at a high, and the cost of unhappiness, part of it is distrust and low morale. There's all kinds of implications from that. So first, what I want to do before I dive into some of those statistics, I want to show you this little video clip that really points to something that's sort of shocking, which is that there's a great deal of our workforce that's unhappy.
Employment, a hallmark of adulthood. In fact, over 3.3 billion of us are employed. That's roughly half the global population. And since employment is so important for our livelihoods, we should enjoy it, right? After all, do what you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Well, not exactly. A staggering half of the global workforce is unhappy at their jobs. That's 1.7 billion unhappy workers. That's roughly 5.2 times the population of the US and 1.3 times the population of China. With all these unhappy workers, it's not a surprise the global turnover rate is at 28%. In the US alone, the retail industry has a turnover rate of 74%. Factor in the part-time workforce, and it's a whopping 124%. And high turnover costs can get expensive. It costs an organization between 16 to 21% of an employee's annual salary. Why? How can we easy
Okay,
for
whoop. I'm going to try and
with
get out of this.
easy-to-use, error-free tools? In turn, employment
Uh-oh.
or your
Uh-oh,
employers
Shannon.
will have manage their own schedules in
Okay, let's see if we can get out of that one. Sorry about that. Good. Oh, there we go. Okay.
No problem.
Am I back on?
You're back on. You're live. You're ready to go. Thanks.
All right, so you get the big idea that, I mean, that's kind of a staggering statistic that over half of the global workplace is unhappy at their jobs. And I want to unpack that a little bit and just kind of see if we can point to the components or the elements of workplace unhappiness. So we know that stress, unhappy workplaces are high stress zones, and stress is expensive. These are annual statistics. $500 billion is lost annually due to workplace stress, and 500 million work days are lost. I know when I first read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. We know that stressed out employees call in sick more. They just don't show up for work. And roughly 60% of accidents on the job are related to stress. So we also know that there's some safety implications in an unhappy, stressed workplace. Disengagement. Unhappy people check out more. They disengage, hang back, phone it in. And most business leaders know how costly this is. The Gallup poll has published all kinds of good statistics on low engagement. We know that companies with low engagement scores have 18% lower productivity and profits are 16% lower. They also have a 37% lower job growth and a 65% lower share price over time. So disengagement is costly, and it is a component of unhappiness at work. Finally, low morale and distrust. In our work, we do a whole bunch of work with teams that their chief complaint is we don't trust one another. It's not a good place to work. So we're really looking at unhappiness impacting distrust and low morale. So I'm imagining most of these statistics are familiar to you, so don't need to necessarily go on and on, but this is why we believe focusing on happiness at work matters. So happiness is serious business. You might think that happiness is sort of a nice to have, something that you don't necessarily have to focus attention on, but we believe we do. Happiness is on the radar screen more and more. Many people are writing about it, publishing about it, trying to make sense of it from a whole number of angles. The Career Bliss puts out the 50 happiest companies in America. So they have a list, and this includes factors such as company culture, overall work atmosphere, and one's relationship with coworkers. We also know that the chief reason that people leave a company is they leave because of their boss, their manager, an unhappy relationship with their manager. So there's lots of other lists out there. Here's Fortune's 100 Best, and you'll notice that not a lot of the same companies are on these two reports. Some of you may be aware of the Great Places to Work survey. There's others out there. And the implication is that these places are good to work at. People are happy, morale's up, management's on the ball. So while we see a lot being written, published, shared about happiness at work, what we believe at the Henley Leadership Group is there's a gap. And that gap is we're not focusing on the impact of managers and leaders on overall happiness. In other words, each manager, and I'll assume on this webinar that many of you may be managers or leaders, your influence, your impact on the organization very much counts. So we're focusing in our work on happiness on the leader's role and how they create happiness. And remember, we're not talking about foosball tables or free beer and popcorn. That's the easy stuff, and frankly, that doesn't really move the needle. We're talking about deep, lasting, I love to work here happiness, where we could interview any one of your team members and they would say, oh my gosh, I am thrilled to be able to work there with those leaders. So let's get to really this chief focus, how to build a happy work culture one leader at a time. And I want to start with a quote by the Dalai Lama. He says, happiness is not ready-made. It comes from your own actions. So this is this idea that our own personal accountability matters, our own consciousness or the way we are, how we show up, how we do things very much matters. So we want to have you start to shift your attention to, well, how might I be impacting happiness on my team, in my organization? I want to introduce to you our kind of simple model that allows us to kind of walk around and reset, reconnect, and reimagine. I heard a saying not too long ago. It said, anything will work better if you unplug it for a few minutes. This is the idea of reset. And then, once we plug back in, how do we connect from a better place? How do we recharge from a better place? And then that allows us to really reimagine and take brand new actions.
And Dede, I'll just say that this model that you're about to walk through, it's available as a handout in your handout screen. If you can't find it right now, it will be sent to everybody after the session, but just know that you do have access to this.
Great, thanks, Shannon. All right. So where we're going to start naturally is at reset, at the very first place. And, we have an important assumption here that no matter what level, what your role is in the organization, every one of us goes on autopilot from time to time, which just means that we go heads down. We're not really paying attention to our impact on others. I was in the airport a couple of months ago and I saw a guy with, dragging his suitcase behind him. And he was moving very fast. Obviously, he had to get to the gate kind of speedy-like. And in the process of moving quickly, he knocked a little 2 or 3 year old child over. And it didn't even faze him. He just kept right on going. And I thought that's kind of what happens when we get moving too fast. We don't really turn around and look and see what wake we've created behind us. So we think about this reset as starting to become more conscious, more aware of when and where you go on autopilot, which is to say you're not really thinking, you're not really intending to do what you're doing. And I'll share with you a CEO that I worked with some years ago. He was in the CFO role, and his habit, I suppose, his autopilot was that he was sarcastic. He was very bright, very quick-witted and cutting. And that was okay, I suppose, in the CFO role. And then he was promoted, the board promoted him to the CEO role. And all of a sudden, sarcasm became more costly. So his autopilot, his habit of using sarcasm came out in a board meeting where he took a cut kind of at one of his senior team members and really rattled that person's confidence, not to mention embarrassed him in front of the board. So there we see the wake of sarcasm in a very different way than we might have when he was in the role of CFO. Now, my client, the CEO, was blind to this dynamic. He did not see it. So as his coach, part of my job was to really illuminate a blind spot and allow him to see something that he hadn't seen. Fortunately, he was open to doing things very differently and changing some very well-worn habit patterns, and was able to start to move away from sarcasm. And resetting is about all of that. It's about course correcting, changing maybe well-worn habits, and seeing yourselves much more clearly. During a reset, we get much more accountable. We start to know that we have a hand in what's happening around us. So what I want you to do is, I'm going to invite you to think about what's your autopilot. What do you do? I'm going to give you a list of our top 10. We've been sharing these over the years, and we've really collected the ones that we think most people do. So as I go through these, please raise your hand. I think, Shannon, you pointed to where that was in,
Yep.
on the screen.
And if you can't find it, you can just type it into your chat box. Like,
Great.
yep, that's me under stress. That's me when I'm kind of automatically behaving. Just share with us. I won't rat out who said what. It's confidential. We're coaches. That's what we do. But yeah, please put it in the window.
So here we go. Here's the first one is I'll do it myself. I'm going to give a very brief description of these. This is the martyr. This is where you really think that you have to do it yourself. The second one is self-righteousness. This is yours if you're always right, if you're kind of a walking argument, or you're asking other people, don't you think I'm right? Third is self-sabotage. That's where you beat yourself up and kind of are hard on yourself after you do something. Number 4 is acting politically. This is when you change the way you engage in order to receive more approval or kind of be seen in a better light.
We have people that are saying yes to all of them so far.
That's funny.
It is, it's good.
Cynicism is, where you've become cynical, you've got, kind of become hard-hearted, and that's definitely an autopilot. Sarcasm, I just talked about that. That was actually my autopilot. I was trained in my family system by 4 uncles and a dad who were all very good at sarcasm. So sarcasm was really the habit that I had to start to break as well. Intellectualization, this happens with really, really smart people. They usually, they talk a lot, they use a lot of theories and models and usually have a lot to say. Domination, this is where you assert your authority or your power over others. Coalition building, this is where you seek approval or you seek agreement from those who agree with you. And finally, withdrawal, which is where you either physically or emotionally withdraw yourself from a circumstance where you're uncomfortable. So I'll stop there for a minute and see, Shannon, what people have to say about.
Oh my God. Well, it's that people like all of them.
Okay.
And I think that's an important thing is we do all of them in some capacity. We have our favorites, I think, where we've gained a lot of muscle and they're automatic and we don't think about it. And then there's a few that we dabble in. So really, there's a lot of I'll do it myself, intellectualization. Some people are saying all of the above. They're naming their top 2 or 3. So what's great, what I love about this is how quickly people are willing just to play along. So thank you for that. And Dede, do you want to say a bit just about once you spot it, you sort of got it in a different way? Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah, in our work, we say, if you spot it, you got it. Which just means that if it's in your blind spot, and we're going to talk about blind spots in just a minute, but if it's in your blind spot, it's actually hidden from you. You don't know you do it. I remember some years ago, I realized how self-righteous I was, really arrogant with my own mother. And I went to her sort of tearfully apologizing for being so self-righteous. And she said, oh, sweetheart, you didn't have to pay all that money to find that out. I could have told you. So these are things that are not a secret or hidden from other people. They're hidden from you if you don't see them. So if you spot it, you got it, just means you've brought it around out of your blind spot and you can deal with it directly then. And you can imagine as we look at these top 10 autopilot behaviors, all of them contribute to an unhappy workplace. So if I'm using self-righteousness or sarcasm, which actually are my 2 top autopilot behaviors, I'm going to create something very different in my team than if I, spot it and got it. If I don't use those behaviors. So this is where we start to see that we may have something to do with unhappiness at work, and that's an important takeaway here.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
I'm going to say one more thing. Don't leave this webinar and go tell somebody else what their autopilot is. Okay. Your job is to know yours and let people discover their own. So just a reminder about that. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Don't tell other people that they're being sarcastic or cynical. It just doesn't go well. Warning, right? All right. So thanks for sharing your autopilot. And back to our idea of resetting. we believe that resetting can involve two things. The first thing is being open to feedback. So if you're not sure what your autopilot is, ask others. Show them this list. We have some teams who actually print this list and pass it around and ask people to say, what is my autopilot behavior? So being open to feedback is where you allow others to inform you and thereby reveal a blind spot. And then sharing more openly with others. Excuse me. If you're trying to change a habit, you're going to need support. You're going to need others to kind of help reveal your blind spot. So I had one leader who actually used sarcasm, and his team members got little white flags, and so they would wave these like, "Oh, you're doing it again," you know. And that was a way of him being open to feedback, but also sharing more openly. You know, help me, let me know what you see. Okay, let's see. So what I want to do next is I want you to think of a situation at work that's currently unhappy, causing unhappiness. And it would be something in your direct work lane. And I want you to consider whether seeking feedback or sharing information might help. So Shannon's going to go ahead and run this poll.
Yep. And do you see the poll, Dede?
I do. I see it.
All right. Well, thank goodness. Okay, good. So what we're asking is, as Dede said, reflect on a situation right now that maybe there's some happiness, some stress around, some area that feels stuck. And really what we're looking at is, as a way of resetting, are any of the following that would make a difference. So such as asking for feedback, maybe providing some feedback, maybe just sharing more information about yourself or your thinking. Or it's okay to also say, I'm not sure at this time, given what we know so far. So go ahead and take some time to answer the poll. It's great. And once again, so much great. Thank you for engaging with me in the dialogue. I love hearing all of your thinking and all of your questions. There's some great questions. And whatever I don't get to, please know that we'll follow up and connect with you on this. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in about 5 seconds. Great. Good. Very even
Good
feedback. Dede, anything you want to just say in regards to sort of quick tips on any of those?
Well, you know, I'll focus here on the 32% share more information. And, you know, vulnerability and transparency has really become so much a part of what's necessary for leaders. Charlene Lee wrote a great book called Open Leadership. And, you know, we're living now in a time where people have all kinds of they can share information so freely on Glassdoor or by other means of social media. So you being more open is certainly a big part of what it takes to be a great leader. I just want to focus on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see, I want to go here. So that resetting is really about kind of stop doing what you've been doing that doesn't work, you know, break those old habits. So next I want to talk about reconnecting. And, you know, what I know is that no baby is born sarcastic. No toddler is walking around being quick-witted and cutting, you know, as funny as that might seem. People become that way. We don't start out that way, you know, and really the top 10 autopilot behaviors are 10 of thousands of learned behaviors that we pick up along the way. And part of what we want to do is start to reconnect to some of the best of who we are. We call it your core strengths. And we actually believe that our core strengths have been with us all along the way. So it's that simple. Reconnecting is that simple and that difficult, I should say, because breaking these old habits is hard to do. But getting back in touch with your core, the best of what you are here to bring. And, you know, I'll just share my own story again. You know, I was really trained in sarcasm, but at my best, I'm very playful and generous. And So, you know, I always get to kind of choose between being sarcastic and maybe self-righteous as my backup autopilot, or being generous and playful. And we certainly can imagine which one is going to produce more happiness at work. So how do I disconnect from, you know, reset and not use some of these autopilot behaviors and reconnect to some of the things that are the best of who I am? So that's what reconnecting is all about, is really you connecting to the best of who you are. And often your core strengths, as we call them, other people have been commenting on them all of your life. So they're not hidden from you at all. So what I'd like to do is hear what is the one word that describes you at your best? What's a word that you would refer to as your best?
And once again, please go ahead and comment in the chat window. What's one of yours, Dede,
Well,
as people are filling it in?
Generous, passionate for sure. I certainly have been very passionate. Trustworthy is another word that would describe me at my best. How about you, Shannon? Who are you at your
Creative, for sure. I get that one a lot. Fun. I hear that as a facilitator, that one of my skills is I have deep, deep conversations, but with a lot of levity and fun and humor. So, oh, look at all these words. Oh my gosh. Okay. Kind, fun. Someone said sexy. I love it.
Good.
Integrity, dependable, innovative, a quick learner, supportive, authentic, genuine, insightful, energizing, loving, kind, sharp, funny, present. Just to name a few, and they're still coming in. Spitfire, that's a fun one. That one just showed up. That's a good one. I don't hear that one very often. And positive and creative.
Great. All right, beautiful. Well, really, that's the muscle that has to be built, is time after time, especially when things aren't going well. It's easy to bring those strengths when everything's going swimmingly. It's harder when you're up against the wall, when you're stressed, when things aren't going well. So always in those moments of difficulty, we would invite you to choose. Either choose from coming from your autopilot behaviors or coming from this set of core strengths. And to keep building that muscle over and over again to come from that set of core strengths. So here's what we recommend. How do you reconnect? We invite our clients to make a list of 3 to 5 core strengths, then communicate them so everyone knows. You know, often our leaders put them up on the wall in their office or write them on their whiteboard or in some way make them visible. Invite people to call you out when you're not coming from those core strengths. So you start to cultivate some partnership at work and give people permission to really call you to your best. And then finally, we encourage you to have everyone on your team do this process of identifying their core strengths, making them visible, and then calling each other on it. So that allows people to keep reconnecting over and over and over to something that does create happiness at work. Shannon, anything you want to add here?
Well, I just noticed for myself. So if I think about having a leader that leads from core strengths, who speaks to them and brings them into this space, like just over here, having all of you write those words, like it was an instant energizer to me versus the previous list that was like, you know, cynical, making people wrong, you know, the other way that we can be at work. So there is something about, as leaders, just simply bringing the language and the attention to it that can absolutely energize and increase happiness within the team. And I have a lot of great questions around how to do it and, you know, ways to build this with the team, but always the leader starts first. You know, you bring it yourself first.
That's great. That's why they call it leadership, right? You go first. You be the one that shows the way, and people follow then. So that's so great. Beautiful. So that is about resetting. So we've talked about, reconnecting. Resetting is really where you identify your autopilot behavior and start to try to reset from it. Reconnecting is about getting back in touch with and leading from your core strengths. So what those two make possible is a little bit of a clearing and opening. And from there, we think about reimagining. So once you've gotten some of the drama and trauma removed from your workplace, you now have a clearing to reimagine, to create something unique and amazing. And this question, how big are you willing to think? So our question is really what if you had people who were creative and inspired on your team? What might they create? And this resetting and reconnecting opens the space for that. So reimagining really does, from my perspective, it asks that you maybe think beyond how you know to lead or what you know to create. You open yourself to your team. You open yourself to big, bold, fresh ideas. And I'll tell you, on our team, this is certainly what we're working towards. And I'll tell you a story. So last year, I think it was a couple of years now, one of our highest performing employees came to my business partner and I and asked if we would be willing to implement unlimited paid time off, which sounded like a really cool, we knew a lot of other firms that were doing it, sounded like a cool idea. I don't remember there being a whole lot of resistance to the idea. And so we said, sure, we'll do an experiment for 1 year. This is something we had never even considered before. So we were going to do an experiment. And the agreement, we had a couple of boundaries. We wanted to be given notice. We didn't want our employees to take more than 2 weeks off without some considerable notice, so we could make sure there was job coverage and all that. So great, we're a yes. We say yes to this unlimited paid time off. And our star employee who's asked for this comes back at the start of the new year and says, here's the 8 weeks that I'm going to be taking off over the course of this year. And honestly, I kind of freaked out a little bit. It seemed like, oh my God, that's 8 weeks. That's so much time. And no, we can't give our people 8 weeks off. And I called my business partner. She said, well, it is unlimited paid time off. And we agreed to a 1 year experience. I was like, okay, fair point. Got it. And in the midst of that, as a leader, what I really recognized is I have some very outdated ways of thinking about how people earn time off. Really, ideas that don't work anymore. They don't serve our team. So I had to kind of get myself straightened out a little bit. And part of what I'm very dedicated to is to creating structures that allow our team to stay fresh, inspired, creative, loving their work. And unlimited paid time off is one of the things that contributes to that. Our employees love unlimited PTO. It's working. And in fact, our employees are more motivated. They're actually delivering more than they've always been delivering good work. So it's working. But I offer that as an example of how big are you willing to think? What are you willing to create so that your team might be happy at work? And certainly then contribute to happy customers, happy outcomes, happy clients. And that becomes the space that Reimagine is in. Shannon, anything you want to say about that?
No, I think that this is the gift, as you said, of taking time to call a timeout on yourself as a leader, just hit reset to own your blind spots, to reconnect what really matters, is that you actually, as you said, you keep your team and your organization fresh and current with what's needed. Right. Yes, unlimited PTO is an emerging trend, but there's all sorts of things in your company that need to be looked at freshly, and that's the gift of this.
Yeah, that's so great. All right, good. So let's, I want to show this little video clip. Part of reimagining means that you ask your team, what does happiness at work mean to you? And then you listen. So I'm going to play this little video clip here.
Know that I accomplished something productive and useful.
Opportunity to explore different avenues and different interests.
A sense of lightheartedness and camaraderie.
Freedom to explore and try new things.
See some positive impact that you're making.
Working together as a team.
meaningful relationships with people that you're working with.
Being able to express your opinion and express your ideas.
To know that somebody appreciated something that you did. Non-dysfunctional work environment, art, photography, fast internet access, constant change. Every day is kind of a new adventure. Functioning air conditionings, constantly be crying. Comfortable chair, a short commute. I like lots of light. Oh my goodness.
People I work with make me feel appreciated, even if it's just a smile or them saying, hey, you did a really good job on this. That means the world to me. Like, there is no amount of overtime that I would work just to hear people say that. Like, it wouldn't matter.
Great. Sweet.
Yeah. Oops. Okay, I'm going to go back now. So, I want to run a poll. What action are you willing to take as a result of today's learning? So go ahead and run that poll, Shannon. Let's just see how we did today, because we're getting close to the end of our time.
Yeah. So, we introduced a few ideas today that, are hopefully enough to trigger some good thinking for you. And so, one is paying attention to your blind spots, your autopilot behavior. Are you willing to sort of maybe take on increasing feedback and sharing? Are you going to focus on bringing your best strengths to work? Or are you willing to perhaps take on bold and new action? And really what we're looking at is sometime within the next week or two, a way to take some of these nuggets of learning and get them to work and put them into action after this webinar.
Great.
So we'll take a few minutes. People are still voting. Fascinating. I love polls. It's so great to sort of get like the mindset of folks that are with us today. All right, I'm going to close in a few minutes. Oh, it's always hard to shut people off. Okay, here we go.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Huh.
Good. So I'd like to say something real quick, and this is something that I've learned from doing this work for the past 10 years or so, is often the feedback and the caring, the feedback and the sharing part is the most challenging. And what I would like to say is it's because we haven't had good models for feedback and we don't really know how to do it. So there's tons of great blogs and articles out on our website, and I'll send some resources after this to everybody around that. The work is how do you learn how to do it well, because it does matter. So it doesn't surprise me that it's one of the lower ones. Usually we're a bit nervous about that. And I'd say bringing your best to work, it's a great place to start. It's one of the, you already know it, you already have access to it, it's right there. So just escalating that within yourself is a huge win for everybody around you. Anything else you want to add, Dede, about the poll?
No, I love that you pointed that out. Yeah, feedback and sharing is the place of vulnerability or kind of risk, right? So we kind of hesitate. So I love that you offer.
So I'll make sure to send a resource in the follow-up to all of you.
Great. Yeah, so this, action is the thing that leaders have to take. It's up to us. If we want to have happy workplaces, we have to make some changes. It's not outside of us. So often we're brought into organizations that are unhappy, whether they call themselves that or not. But they want us to help fix it. Well, we always start with the leader. How are you being? What's your energy? What are you creating around you? What's the wake that you are leaving? And that is often the territory of coaching and change. So we really want to, kind of thank you for being on this webinar, for exploring this idea of happiness at work, and hope that you take something away that really makes a difference for you. I want to leave you with this quote by Thomas Edison. When you've exhausted all possibilities, remember this: you haven't. So thank you again for your time and energy and being on the webinar with us. And we'll look forward to hearing from you, or maybe even seeing you out there soon.
Yeah, and as a reminder, for all of you that attended live today, you will have access to a little mini coaching call with me. I'm going to be sending up some follow-up information about that. And really, it's your chance to ask, if I didn't get to your question, to ask the questions, to maybe get coaching, to really look at how do I bring this to my team? What do I need to do better as a leader? So I'll be sending out ways to get that scheduled within the next week or so. And thank you. It was so fun being with all of you. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Have a good one. Thanks, everybody. Take good care.
day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. How do